Hi, I'm Leo and welcome to Scoldemy. In this video, I'll be going over 5 deadly CSS mistakes that most web developers make, especially beginners. Alright guys, at the end of this tutorial, if you think the video was helpful, please hit the like button. And if you have anything to say or any mistake that you think I left out, please leave a comment. And if you're new, please consider subscribing for more updates. Alright, we'll start with not using a CSS reset or a proper CSS reset. Now, a CSS reset is a short, often compressed set of CSS rules that resets the styling of all HTML elements to a consistent baseline. Now, every web browser has its own default style sheet or styling. Now, this ensures that every HTML document is rendered reasonably well when you don't provide a custom style sheet. For example, when you go to my HTML document here, you would see that I have a paragraph, and when you go to my CSS file, you will see that I have no code in my CSS style sheet. But when you go to the browser and inspect elements, you will notice that now when I click on my paragraph here, you will notice that the browser has already given it a margin of 16 pixel. Now this is good because it helps your HTML document to appear more appealing to the user. But the problem is every web browser has its own default style sheets. Therefore, your code will not appear the same on all browsers. Now we use the CSS reset to force these browsers to have its style sheets reset to null, thus avoiding this cross-browser difference as much as possible. Now for most web developers, what you find is they use something called the universal selector, and then they set the border, the margin, padding, and all to 0, and the box sizing set to border box. Alright, this is good, but is really not enough. Now some developers also argue that it's useless to use a CSS style sheet, a CSS reset. Well, that's yours to decide. Alright, to know more about the CSS resets, you can check out my video on CSS reset. Alright, next is using absolute units instead of relative units, that is using pixel for everything. Now it's important to use relative units such as rem, viewport height, percent, and so on. And it's also very important to know when and where to use these units. Now this ensures that the website scales proportionally according to your choice of font and according to the user's choice of zoom level. Now the problem with absolute units like the pixel is that every browser has a different monitor size, and their browser windows or the viewports also have assorted sizes. So you must try to place your elements in relative terms instead of absolute terms, otherwise the available space on the screen will not scale appropriately to every window size. Yeah, I know you might say we use media query to design for desktop, for mobile, and stuff like that, but like everything else, the media query is not perfect, so we use these relative units to make up for that. Alright, to know more about the absolute units, the relative units, when and where to use these units, you can check out my video on absolute units versus relative units. Alright, next is using anything other than class selectors. Now there's one issue that tends to confuse front-end developers who are just getting started, and that is the choice between class selectors and ID selectors. Well, they do basically the same thing, but I would strongly suggest that you always go with the class selectors over the ID selectors. Now to know more about class selectors and ID selectors, and to know when and where to use any of these, you can check out my video on class versus ID versus contextual selectors, where I discussed that in details. Alright, next is using something called cheetah styles. For example, instead of using standard methods for your layout, like using the flexbox or CSS grid, you start using things like negative margins, using position absolutes combined with a specific pixel value and other hacks. Now, this cheetah styles and stuff that when you're asked to explain, you tend to say things like, it just works. Now, you might achieve your goal at the moment, but on the long run, these bad habits tend to hurt you. One, you might not be able to reuse that CSS style sheet because you can't even explain what happened or how it works. Now, it's best to use standard methods to achieve your goal instead of using hacks. Alright, next is not using shorthand properties. Well, using the CSS shorthand improves efficiency and makes it easier to maintain your code. It also saves lot of time. For example, when I go to my CSS file here, now instead of writing this long code here, you can use the shorthand properties and you'll have this. Or instead of doing it this way, you can use the shorthand property. You can see it makes your code more compact. It makes it easy to maintain this code. Alright, thanks guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.